Really enjoyed that. Well, you ready to move on to
Absolutely.
our next? Okay. Our next special guest is Jason Kim. So let me tell you a little something about this gentleman. CEO of Millennium Space Systems. It's a Boeing subsidiary based in El Segundo, California. Millennium Space Systems delivers high-quality small satellites across all orbits. And from missile warning to advanced national security space missions, Millennium rapidly delivers affordable prototype and constellation solutions. Jason has leadership training from the United States Air Force Academy, the Air Force Institute of Technology, the U.S. Air Force, Boeing Leadership Center, and UCLA Anderson School of Management with technical degrees in electrical engineering. So a well-taught man for sure.
Absolutely. And we've known him since his days at Raytheon, and he's now heading up this great division of Millennium, Boeing. And it's just an honor to have Jason back with us, and appreciate him being a sponsor.
Good morning.
Good morning. First of all, can everybody hear me okay?
We sure can. You sound great.
Okay, great. Hey, Scott, I just got to do a shout out to you. I grew up in Dallas, Texas, and I watched you forever, with all the news.
Every night on the news,
sports. Yeah. So It's really a pleasure for me to be on the same panel with you. So thank you.
Well, that means more than you know. I very much appreciate your kind thoughts, and we're delighted to have you as well. So take it away, my friend, and thank you again for being a part of this program today.
Thank you. Well, good morning, everybody. And thank you for joining us for the STEM Education and Space Economy panel. At Millennium Space Systems, we are a fast, agile, small satellite company focused on national security space. Our company is made up of all kinds of engineering disciplines, technicians, and many supporting functions that make it all run smoothly. And today, I'm really excited about the group of distinguished panelists we have who will share how we better prepare the next generation STEM workforce, which is near and dear to my heart and the rest of the industry. I am sure you want to hear from them, so I'm just going to quickly provide an introduction to each panelist, and then we'll get right to the questions. So in alphabetical order, first, Dr. Roger Bonnecaze is the interim dean of the Cockrell School of Engineering at the University of Texas, Austin. He's an internationally recognized expert in rheology and nanomanufacturing modeling and simulation, and co-founded the first National Science Foundation Engineering Research Center. Roger has won numerous awards and is a fellow of several organizations, including the American Institute of Chemical Engineers, Go Chemical Engineers, and the American Association for Advancement of Science. Then we have Lesa Roe, the Chancellor of the University of North Texas System, which is responsible for 36,000 students. She has over 37 years of experience in government, aerospace, research and development, higher education, and large-scale operations. Prior to UNT, Lesa had 33 years at NASA, rising to second in command as NASA's deputy director. She's also been named to the Dallas 500, a list of influential business leaders in Dallas-Fort Worth for 5 years running. And last but certainly not least, Dr. Mike Toole, Dean of the College of Engineering at the University of Toledo. Mike has been an entrepreneurial and interdisciplinary leader in the military, industry, and academia. He also served as a company commander in a CV battalion, an assistant resident officer in charge of construction with the U.S. Navy Civil Engineering Corps. Go Navy. So with that, thank you all for being with us here today. We know all of y'all are busy, so let's just jump in, and I'll kick this off by having each of you share how your universities are focused on building the STEM pipeline. So Lesa, let's start with you.
Thanks, Jason. Glad to be here. And we are focused at all of our universities very much around growing the STEM pipeline. Zero in on UNT today, but overall we have 50,000 students. So we've grown a lot since my introduction there that you were talking about. And at UNT, we have about 42,000 students alone at our flagship campus. That campus specifically has grown 4% in the last year. And that's with this pandemic and everything else going on. And engineering is the fastest growing college at the university. And so in the past couple of years, it's grown about 15%. It's a relatively new engineering college. And it was established in 2003. And it has students that are in mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, computer science engineering, biomedical, and material science and engineering. All of those are core areas that are needed for space, as well as so many other industries that are out there. So we're excited about our growth and excited about our students. One thing I want to say that really differentiates us is that our universities, we have 2 universities that are minority serving and Hispanic serving institutions, and our College of Engineering is also minority serving and Hispanic serving, meaning that it also is made up that way. And so we're really proud that a lot of our students are first gen. So we're getting students that have never been in the STEM pipeline before into our universities, and we're really excited about that. Some kind of key things that we're doing, we have 4,000 students in engineering, but we also have students in information sciences, which is data science and data analytics, which are all key to the science field. We have 3,800 students in our College of Science. And some of the key things that we're doing is we have an artificial intelligence master's, which is the first in the state. It's a standalone master's, and it's also one of the few in the nation. And what we do is this interdisciplinary approach to that, where we take skills that are existing skills and mix those with AI knowledge. And I think that's really exciting and something that is really important for the future around machine learning, biomedical engineering, and autonomous systems, all in this area. So that's just a couple of things that we're doing in STEM, but we weave STEM into our College of Business and data analytics, and we weave STEM even into our College of Music, which we're well known for. So a lot going on at our University of North Texas system.
That's very exciting, Lisa. Thank you for sharing. Why don't we move on to Dr. Toole? Would you mind sharing?
Well, good morning, Jason. Thank you for the chance to talk this morning. You know, the STEM, as Chancellor Rowe said, so important for our workforce, really. And so we're doing a couple things. And I want to name 3 at the University of Toledo's College of Engineering. First of all, we got to do outreach. We've got to make sure that students, high school students, even middle schools, are thinking of what a great career in engineering or STEM can be. And so for that, you know, a lot of times students aren't thinking about it. Maybe, you know, females have been traditionally underrepresented. We have a whole bunch of students here in Toledo that are at public schools that are not fully resourced and get them ready for to jump right into engineering, the calculus, the physics, et cetera. So we do outreach to them to get them on the right track in high school. And then we also have pathways that they start at the University of Toledo and then kind of move into a more engineering ready curriculum. I guess the third thing that we do, I think, pretty well here is we have a mandatory co-op program. So they have to do at least three to 4 months long, full-time with an employer. They're getting paid. And these co-ops that give this experiential learning that really helps them not only afford college, graduate with no debt, but also gives them persistence because they realize, I know what engineering is. And you know what, there's people out there in these firms who want me, are waiting for me with open arms for when I graduate. So we're trying to increase retention and persistence and graduation rates through our co-op program.
Fantastic news to hear, Dr. Toole. Why don't we move on to Roger?
Well, thanks a lot, Jason, and good morning, everyone on the call. So there are several things going on at the University of Texas, many of them similar to things that Michael and Lisa talked about. As Michael said, outreach is a key component here. The way I look at this is that we're in a very competitive environment, especially in terms of national security and space. And we don't want to leave any intellectual capital on the table. So the outreach component, bringing in as many people into STEM, is important. So we have programs where we go into middle schools to make sure the kids are on track. There are a lot of studies that show you need to get kids thinking about the sciences and engineering when they're in 7th and 8th grade to make sure they're taking those math classes that they need to, and geometry and algebra, so that they'll be calculus ready when they get to college. One program that we actually are launching in a week at the University of Texas is something called We STEM. It's Women in STEM, and it's going to be an outreach program throughout the state of Texas to encourage women to enter the STEM fields and to come to the University of Texas, University of North Texas, basically all over the state of Texas and beyond. Once we get the students here, we want to make sure that we make sure that they're supported and succeed. So we have many programs for that. I'll just talk about one, I think, really exciting way to keep kids engaged and understand the value of the aerospace business. We have a Texas Rocket Engineering Lab, which is not a student organization. It's actually it's a university-sanctioned teaching lab, and it's actually been funded by Firefly, one of the rocket companies in Texas. And here the students get to design and actually test at the Firefly site, a liquid rocket. And we actually had our first live firing test not too long ago. So this is a really exciting way for them to apply what they're learning in class and see some of the options and great opportunities in the aerospace business.
Thank you, Roger. The work you are all doing is vital to building the next generation workforce, as we heard, especially from my perspective in aerospace and the industry. Shifting gears a bit, if you turn on the news in one way or another, you're going to hear something related to space, whether it's new satellites or human space flight programs. It's really booming right now. And most people don't even realize just how reliant everybody is on space. And that leads me into my next question for all of y'all. Why do you consider the space economy to be important for our nation? And what is your university doing to support the space economy? And I guess I'll start with Roger.
The space economy is booming. I would say it particularly so in Texas. There's launch facilities for SpaceX, for Blue Origin, as I mentioned earlier. Firefly, has facilities in Texas as well. And this is basically important for things ranging from communications to remote sensing to disaster analytics, disaster management, and of course, national security. In terms of, what are we doing to support this? It really comes in two pieces. One is the workforce development that we talked about. And of course, these activities involve folks not just from aerospace engineering, but electrical engineering, computer science, engineering, mechanical engineering, and many others. I was actually on a call yesterday with a space tech company, and it's very clear that software is as important as hardware is these days. And so we have a very large programs in software to support that activity. The other component, of course, is the research activity. And so we're involved in all sorts of research projects related to communications, automations, situational awareness are valuable for the space economy. But in a broader sense, I think all the universities bring forth are really trusted partners, and we provide a forum for trying out ideas for other partners that basically can be shared and so that the whole ecosystem can understand what can work and what may not be the best solution.
Yeah, I like what you said there, Roger, that software is just as important as hardware. And I'm sure Nicholas would agree with you from the prior panel. Why don't we move on to Lesa? Would you mind answering the same question?
Sure, Jason. And I agree with Roger. Roger talked a lot about it, and you did as well. But I think the space economy, people don't even grasp how big it is. It's, it's launch vehicles, satellites, but quite frankly, it's the services, it's the satellite TV, radio, broadband. It's also the analytical services that come around, everything from all the data in space and how to apply that to so many apps that are cropping up now, on our iPhones and everything else. So it's broad and big. Numbers I've seen is around $400 billion industry. Here in Texas, the latest report I saw was $124 billion. So that's pretty big. I also don't know if people know, people think Johnson Space Center and things like that. Certainly I do from my past, but it is also number one in the nation for aerospace engineers. It has 140,000 workers in aerospace and aviation. It has 52,000 aerospace and aviation related degrees since 2015. So there's a lot going on in Texas, and it's #1 in the US for aerospace manufacturing firms. I already mentioned we're SpaceX, Blue Origin, they have test sites here. Of course, Lockheed Martin, I think one of its biggest facilities is in Fort Worth. Axiom Commercial Space Station, a commercial space station is located here in Texas. Firefly, of course, in a Houston spaceport. So there's just a lot going on. And I think the excitement around the space economy is shown by the magnitude that is invested in startup companies. In 2020, that was $7.6 billion on a Bryce report that I saw, 124 startup companies. That 64% of that is venture capital. That is different than when I retired from NASA about, I don't know, 4 years ago or so now. That's just, in the last 2 years, I think that's doubled in that investment. And so there's a lot going on. I think we're all excited about the space economy. We are all engaged in it in so many ways. And I can tell you the best way that we can be engaged, or at least I consider, is from the very smallest startup that I've talked to the very largest, known Northrop Grumman and Lockheed Martin and others, the biggest aerospace companies. It's talent. People need talent. They need workforce. And that is the most we can do from that regard. Of course, there's R&D and all of that as well, but a talented workforce is where we contribute the most.
No, thank you, Lisa. We're counting on you. And I'm glad that we have representation from California and Texas and also Ohio. So that brings me to Michael. We're going to need all 50 states to help us with the space economy. So Michael from Ohio, what's your perspective on the question?
Yeah, so a great question. First of all, let's remind ourselves, anybody who's read technology policy or innovation policy, and recognize that, since NASA days, space exploration, funding of space exploration has had absolutely trickle-down effects that affect many other sectors of our economy. And now that it's very much, as Chancellor Rowe said, private industry funding of satellites and other things, there's still that trickle-down effect. So very, very important to recognize the space economy is not just benefiting the space economy, it's really overall economy. By the way, before I forget, I got to tell you, Jason, we are the Toledo Rockets. That's literally our mascot, by the way. So that's one way we've been trying to get people to join our industry for quite a while. And I think we do pretty well. I think the space industry alone, the space economy, the fact that students do know about it at a very young age causes them to major in engineering. They may not go in the space economy, but it gets them thinking about it in the first case. So we're provided to continue to provide that workforce that Chancellor Rowe talked about, and it's got to be a diverse workforce because that's what our companies are asking for. I guess the last thing I'd mention also is here at University of Toledo, we have 10 full-time research engineers at NASA Glenn Research Center. They're doing work on propulsion, on combustion, on gaskets and seals, lots of good things. And that enriches our college here and motivates our students who go do co-ops at NASA Glenn or other things. So in fact, I'm very proud that one of our alumni is the director of NASA Glenn Research Center, Dr. Marla Perez Davis. So a very inspiring leader at the helm there. So.
Oh, thank you. I didn't know that about Toledo. I should have known that, but
go Rockets.
I'm taking a lot of notes. It's been a while since I've been at the university, but I'm taking a lot of notes. I'm going to bring back to Millennium Space Systems from everything I'm hearing. A lot of the work we do in industry is around research and development. That's how we're going to keep ahead of the curve. And along those lines, what aspects of space infrastructure should academic aerospace research focus on? I guess, why don't we start with Lisa?
Around space infrastructure?
Yes.
Okay. Key things that we're doing around space infrastructure are, again, we don't have aerospace engineers, but we are focused very much on some of the core things that support that. Some of the things around, and I would say, again, I know in Texas alone, there's been 1.9 billion spent on aerospace related R&D since 2015. So there are so many areas that their investment is needed. And what we focus on is certainly materials things from a material standpoint. We know some of the big barriers for hypersonic flight are around materials. And so we do a lot of work around that. We have an agile and adaptive additive manufacturing center that is very focused on new ways to do additive manufacturing. And some of that actually plays into new kinds of things, even in health related, where you're doing 3D manufacturing of organs and things. It's kind of exciting and crazy. But autonomous vehicle research is another key area that we're focused on that is highly related, and applied artificial intelligence is another kind of key area. So there's all kinds of areas that I think are needed, and certainly from my space days in NASA, know those things are needed. Everything from human research for continued exploration, but for materials, radiation protection, data and communications, propulsion. But those were some of the things that we're focused on.
I love the 3D additive manufacturing part. That really excites me. I think that's really a game-changing technology for space, let alone all other industries. But thank you for sharing, Lisa. Michael?
Yeah, let me build on Chancellor Rowe's comments, because I think I'm also excited about the use of additive manufacturing. And if you think about it, it's not just these days that the most biggest changes. It's not just the manufacturing. It's not just the shaping of parts. The additive, of course, is not reductive. It's very much related to material science, right? So you got to worry about phase changes and latent heat and things like that. And so University of Toledo, we have a good pool of researchers that are doing that. And they're collaborating. It's all about collaboration these days. And here at U Toledo, we've got great partnerships with several national laboratories, Department of Energy National Labs, particularly with Oak Ridge National Lab, which is a leader in this nation in additive manufacturing. But again, you got to recognize, you've got to still think about a customer, right? It's basic engineering, but it's also applied. And so what we've been doing is partnering with Oak Ridge and others to focusing on lightweighting for automotive. If you start thinking about automotive is very important for strength and other mechanical and other physical properties to weight ratio. Well, space, that weight ratio is even more important. So we're very excited about some of the research we're doing in that area. And then as Chancellor Rowe said, it also has health systems and devices, implants, things like that. So, people really, they need to recognize our nation needs to become a leader and move, get funding and additive manufacturing, because there's lots of spillover effects.
Ditto for me as well. Thank you, Michael. How about you, Roger?
Yeah, so I think that Lisa and Michael have touched on aspects that are going on at UT. I think we share this philosophy that there are these sort of enabling areas that we feel very strongly about in materials is one, and then I would say in computer science, AI, and machine learning is another aspect, which of course enables not just the space industry, but well beyond that. Particular to the space area, we're extensively focused on all aspects of hypersonics, communication and navigation technologies, automation and autonomy, particularly automation of assembly and maintenance. And then a big area that we're involved with is in situational awareness. So under space environment sensing, space vehicle sensing. And one of the things that one of our faculty, Moriba Jah, has been leading is a tool called Astriograph, which is basically the world's first multi-source space traffic monitoring framework to basically help with this situational awareness.
That's great to hear, Roger, and that's a great shout out to Dr. Moriba Jah. He's doing some great things at the University of Texas and in the broader community. So that just further solidifies that university research is often critical to what we do in industry. I think we're seeing with the threats out there, we're moving to faster timelines, near real time, and a lot of the things that you're talking about, whether it's the 3D printing to speed up the manufacturing, or the AI and machine learning to speed up collecting data and turning it into useful information. I think those are all great research areas that we're counting on the universities to continue with our next generation workforce. That being said, what businesses will start up and emerge using space-based data and communications like we just talked about? Why don't we start with Michael?
You know, I was hoping you were not going to ask me that question, Jason. That's not really quite my area. So can I pass to one of those and give me a
Sure.
shot at another question?
Sure. Lisa?
Well, goodness. So there are so many startups and so many, I mean, when you go and search, it is fascinating how, I read something in the top 5 of the 274 startups, but it's all, communications, right? So key things around that, from a SpaceX and Amazon, so many out there with Kuiper and the things going on OneWeb and all, but then there's also the data, using the data. There are a lot of startups around using space data and applying that directly toward key areas of need. And you heard a little bit, Roger, I think, talked about disaster recovery and various things being used there, but farming and multiple startup areas. But then there's all kinds of things going on in space from a startup standpoint, everything from space systems and startups around being able to provide various things around that, even battery companies around, battery startups, because that is something that is of need. Ground systems as well, with regard to startups, and orbital debris. Just think about all of that. And that is desperately needed, something that we could do to take care of all the clutter that is going on up there. So, I mean, there's just a world of ideas that I know that we haven't even thought of yet, from a startup standpoint, that I can see in the future. So I bet Roger has a lot more though.
Yeah, over to you, Roger.
Yeah, I think as Lisa said, there's a lot of things that we haven't imagined, and certainly I haven't imagined. But I would say, from what I know, and I'm going to qualify this by saying I'm a chemical engineer by training, is that the lowest hanging fruit is really related to this remote sensing aspect and communications, where, of course, the communications, we've already seen lots of opportunities there. And then with remote sensing, there's just endless possibilities here in terms of, helping optimize, various processes like farming, land use, urban use, responding to disasters or, weather events or some other changes. Of course, there's this whole national security aspect to that as well. And I think and Lisa touched on this, that start to have more and more of these sensors and you're getting more and more data, we'll start to discover things that we can do with that data that we hadn't imagined before, and useful information that we can use for a variety of applications.
Hey, Jason, I thought of
yeah.
one. Could I just real quickly go on? Because Chancellor Rowe got me thinking, and so did Roger, that,
I love it.
Toledo is located right on Lake Erie. Lake Erie doesn't have a great history in the United States. It's one of the Great Lakes and we're still struggling with water quality. And, we have task group here focusing on it, as you might guess, many disciplines, not just engineering scientists, et cetera. We rely on that data. We'll increasingly rely on that data to help us manage temperatures. But the problem is often from fertilizers going in, and the remote data, both sensing and satellite imagery, is going to help us continue to make big differences there. So just one example how we recognize its importance in different, very specific applications sometimes.
And he's got me thinking even more. I mean, there's cleanup. I mean, I know how space data has been used to actually clean up oil spills and to be able to address, right, the thickness of that and so there's just a world of things, right, that can be done. So it's exciting. Very.
It is all very exciting. You're bringing up stuff that I think a lot of us didn't even think about. And so these are real world problems that need to get solved, and we need bright people to solve them. So I'll continue to look forward to seeing how academia can build excitement for the space economy like you are today. And getting students excited and interested in space is half the battle. The other half is about equipping the students with what they need to be in the real world, working in industry. So that leads me to another question before we open it up to the audience. What do we need to be focused on for the engineering students of the future to be productive in the space economy? And I'll start with you, Michael, since,
Thank you.
We kind of passed and then
Sure, I appreciate that. So I would say three things in particular, and then thinking about the specific space economy. If you think about the consequences of failure in the space economy is even more severe. I'm a civil engineer. We don't want buildings or bridges to fall down, but in space, it's absolutely got to be right. So you need a highly precise ability to do systems engineering. And I think in space, you also have to have that multidisciplinary approach. It's so important too. You can't just be a mechanical engineer. You have to have an electrical engineer. And of course, when you bring those two together, that's automation, that helps with industry 2.0 as well. But this idea of multidisciplinary is important, and we need to have that in our engineers. And I guess the third thing I'd say is, so you've got to have precision, very risk tolerant, reduce the chance of risk down to essentially zero. And yet you've got to innovate, because the space economy, like I say, more than any other sector perhaps, is about innovation, moving forward, higher performance materials, higher performance systems, and yet you can't have the cost go crazy. So you've got to innovate while having acceptable modes of failure. I think those are the three things that we need to get our undergrads thinking about it. It's hard sometimes. That's why that experiential education that we talked about helps bring all these kind of theoretical things down to home and helps them really persist and get motivated to get out there in the workplace.
love it. Yeah, it really is about the kind of experience the students gain at these institutions. And then also when they get into the workforce, what kind of culture does a company bring to give them that great work experience as well? So thank you for bringing that up. Roger?
Yeah, so I think Michael touched on three really important aspects. And to kind of build off of his last comment about innovation, one of the things that we're doing at the University of Texas is we're creating a new master's program in space tech. So the idea here is to basically help develop this entrepreneurial mindset and really generate this whole new class of space tech entrepreneurs. So the idea here is that we've got students who get to take classes, technical classes related to space tech, but also business classes and other related classes to help position themselves for success for that. And we're really excited about launching this master's program in a year or so. Other thing that I think is really important for students to get them prepared and also to enlarge the workforce or the potential kinds of students that the space tech industry can hire is the internships programs that all these companies offer. These I think are absolutely critical, and especially in broadening the reach, right? Not just hiring aerospace engineers to help enlarge the pool. These I think are very important. One thing that I guess I'm now flipping this thing, and I want to talk about something that I think industry can help with. And Michael also touched on this, the value of the internships to help reduce the student debt as they come in. One of the things, going back to this idea of we don't want to leave any intellectual capital on the table, if we start bringing in more and more folks first time in college, they're not necessarily in a position to pay for their full education, or it's a financial burden. And support from industry for aggressive scholarships. I mean, I'm talking about scholarships beyond just tuition, covering tuition, but also cost of living will go a long way to help build that workforce and get kids excited and I think committed to entering the space industry.
Thank you for that, Roger. Lisa?
Yeah, so some of the things I'm going to go a little more on the soft skill side. So some of the things that I think, because technology is changing so fast, but some key things that it's important for students to have this experience in and to understand is more around complex problem solving, critical thinking, creativity. Now there was a little bit of that we talked about. People management, working as a team collaboratively, right? That's fundamental to being able to start and to be effective first day on the job. Emotional intelligence, to be able to have judgment and decision making. There's so much in that one. Service orientation, I think, is kind of is something as well. So negotiations, cognitive flexibility, those are some skills that if you can build into your programs across all that we are doing a great service to students. And there's just kind of a key one that I can say in my career that has been the most important is positive attitude. So many, you go so much further with attitude. I always say people, whether you believe you can or you can't, you're right. And I think believing you can is fundamental. So being able to have that and mutual respect and some of those things are things that you build in. We talked about debt and students' debt. One of the first things that we do in our freshman class is around financial education. So it's really having our students have this core class so they know how to manage that, so they don't get themselves in debt, right? Even from that standpoint. Of course, we try to keep our costs low and all of those things as well that drive down the cost of higher ed. But fundamentally, students need to have those skills to be able to manage that. So those are some of the softer skills, but those things are going to apply very broadly to whatever area they go into.
Hey, Jason, could I add on to that? Because, at Chancellor Rowe made me realize something we haven't talked about, and I'm sure my colleagues all agree. You can get those soft skills, get the students in student organizations, whether they're doing Formula One design, whether they're doing something for sustainable, the National Society of Black Engineers, get them in organizations. They're going to learn those soft skills that the Chancellor articulated so well. It's important. It's what's going to enable them to be successful, to collaborate in a team. So we put a lot of time in student organizations at Toledo. I think we have 25 in the College of Engineering alone and another almost 200 on campus. So I think that's a good way of getting that kind of broadening skills, the social skills that the Chancellor mentioned.
Well said, Michael. Well said.
Yeah, indeed. I've got firsthand experience that all the things that you're saying would be great attributes for the future workforce. So thank you for promoting those kind of skills and training our workforce. So I think we're at a time where we could start asking some questions from the audience, if the panel members are okay with that. The first one I have here from the audience is, what type of global collaborative programs are you involved in or planning to join hands-on to advance your current programs? Why don't we start with Roger?
I don't know the names of any specific programs, I'm afraid. I do know that our Center for Space Research definitely has collaborators around the world in terms of analyzing and sharing different kinds of satellite data that they manage. And I also understand that the astrograph work for space traffic monitoring also involves partners that are beyond the United States.
Great. Lesa?
See, our programs are more about really engaging international students, and we have those kind of programs set up across a number of our different colleges. I did want to make one statement there, is that we have just seen an incredible growth in just this past fall and for spring as well in our international students. So I think that some of the things that we saw happen during the pandemic, where those things decreased, are coming back really rapidly. So, but I don't know, I'm trying to think about any global programs other than from this recruiting and student and engagement and the things that we work on and focus on. So I don't know any more to add there.
Thank you. Michael?
Yeah, so I'll answer it in two different ways. Study abroad is a really important for building those soft skills and cultural awareness, but let's face it, it's expensive. And at Toledo, where we focus on accessibility, it's hard for us to afford it. Having said that, once in a while, a donor will step up. So just this morning, I'm planning a trip. I'm going to take 20 engineering students to Switzerland and Germany in May to study renewable energy. So that, those are the kind of things that are going to be very special trips. But let me mention an example on the research side, and that is we have corporate partners, 22 of them, that really are close to us. They support us financially, but they support us with curriculum, changes. What are they looking for in their graduates? Dana Corporation is one that's very important to us, an international organization. They focus on drivetrain. They're looking to electrify their drivetrain, of course, like everybody else. And so they said to Toledo, you do great work domestically, but we need an international perspective. We can't just rely on you being the best. We know that there's folks at University of Twente and others. So we're having partnerships that are both research and enrollment driven with universities around the world and looking particularly for Europe for this case. So I'm guessing my colleagues probably have similar research and enrollment partnerships around the world.
Yeah, I'm taking notes on all this. What I'm seeing is that there's a growing need for coalition and ally, collaboration across the world. And there's just so many new technologies spinning off across the globe as well. And so it's becoming more and more important to work together. So taking a lot of notes with what you're saying today. Another question that came from the audience was, what are your thoughts in promoting space programs at middle schools and engaging minorities at an early age? I'll start with Lesa.
Yeah, I was going to say I have some thoughts there. From a middle school standpoint, or even, well, it's more high school, but I've seen some great success in the Dallas-Fort Worth area on these P-Tech programs. So it's, and I think maybe Dallas-Fort Worth is leading in around that, and that's pathways to technology degrees. And what it does is really, it partners with companies, and I think there's maybe 82 companies that are all partnered with these high schools for these pathways in various skill, need areas from a technology standpoint. And these students get experience, working with this company. That company employees actually come into the high schools and work very closely with them. The students graduate with an associate's degree, so they're already well ahead. Talk about student debt, so they're already well ahead from with no debt. And then they finish their degree much more rapidly and sometimes right into those jobs in those companies. Sometimes it's teacher programs as well to graduate teachers, and they go right in as teachers and various things along that line. So I think that's a really positive program. We have programs also that we with higher ed work very directly with middle schools in camps and various things to engage and get students excited. Even students that are like, we have a great program in neurodiversity where we are engaging students in our College of Engineering and at the middle school age. And it's incredible what these students bring to bear. I know I've talked to a lot of these students, and now companies are really hiring graduates, with neurodiversity, so that they're able to function, and they find ways to really make those students very, very functioning and very successful within their company. So those are a few things that I was thinking of.
Great to hear. Roger, do you have anything to add?
So we have several programs where we basically connect directly to middle schools. What we find and what's prevalent conclusion in the literature about getting kids in the STEM education is the critical point is essentially rising 8th and 9th graders. And so we're specifically targeting them, and we have these, we have programs where we have week-long sort of, I call them fun tech summer camps that focus on different aspects. We focus a lot on software type activities this past year because of COVID, but we have other modules in other areas, mechanical engineering activities to biomedical engineering activities to aerospace engineering activities. And then we have these broader programs where, we bring kids on campus for, week-long camps as well. I will say that in my experience running these kind of programs over my career is that if you really want to have this impact on these kids, is you have to have this sustained connection with them. And so that actually can be challenging. And one thing that I will put out to your community is that, if they take the time and take on this mentoring role with kids in these middle schools and high schools and share their experiences and their pathways, but really are there to help them navigate what's going on, it will make a huge difference in increasing the number of kids into STEM.
Thank you, Roger. Michael, any thoughts?
The only thing I'll add, those are two previous answers were great. The only thing I'll add is sometimes we need to be thinking about focusing on the teachers as well. Because when they are using space or other things to get their students comfortable with math and science and thinking about a career in STEM and maybe in space, the more confidence those teachers have. So I'm very proud with the Department of Education is funded here at the University of Toledo for a number of years, getting a retired Department of Education professor, Charlene Zerniak, tremendous expertise, partnering with our engineering faculty to go into middle schools and high schools and work with the teachers on, and we use autonomous vehicles as a way of a nice hands-on approach, get the students involved hands-on. They all end up with more confidence and more excitement about STEM and their ability to teach it, and then therefore point towards careers. And, we haven't used space, but this has been great because you've given me an example. We're going to try and do that. So thank you.
I'm going to build on that one and with a flashback in my NASA days, but NASA provides all kinds of things for teachers to, as Michael said, for teachers in middle school, because it's not something they just have or can create. So NASA provides various things like that to help engage and excite these students at the middle school level. And quite frankly, even young, it's at the elementary school level and then on into high school, but different levels. And then engages them in various kind of co-op, but it's not called co-op, and I can't remember some of those things, but where the students are engaged in using data from satellite to solve things like issues in the Chesapeake Bay or whatever it is. And these students actually present as part of what they do. So it's really exciting. It gets them exposure. They learn all kinds of skills that we kind of talked about earlier in communication. And so there's some exciting programs I know that NASA works with schools to help create some of these pathways as well.
That's wonderful. We have a few remaining minutes left, so I'm just gonna go weave in some direct questions for each of the panelists. And so first I'll start with Michael. The University of Toledo has a very heavy emphasis on entrepreneurial skills and hands-on learning. It's about the experience, like you said. How has this enabled your students to be more marketable?
Sorry, I was muted. Let me focus on the entrepreneurial. We're partnering with something called the Keen Network. It's right over my shoulder there, that banner, Kern Entrepreneurial Education Network. And they bring to the table, I'm going to tell our industry partners here because they can come into the classroom and use the same framework, 3 C's. C first is curiosity, getting them think about why something matters. They're learning in chemistry or physics or calculus. Second, connections, how they connect the theory to the real world and to other courses they've taken. And the third C, which I think is the most important, is create value. It's not about solving problems. It's not just solving numbers on page. Who is your customer and what's the value you're creating them? That's the real problem solving we need to do. And when you have that entrepreneurial minded learning or thinking, the way Roger mentioned, it really makes students more passionate and it makes them thinking about what they can do for their employer. And so employers are really responding here at Toledo and I think across the Keen network.
Thank you for sharing what Keen means. That's a great program. And we'll like to hear more in the future about that, Michael. Lisa, starting with going back to your unique experience of having a very strong leadership career in aerospace prior to your role as chancellor, from your perspective, do you see a gap between what or really how students learn in workforce engineering role?
I think it's getting a lot better than it was back when when I was graduating from college and all. What I tell any students that I've talked to all along the way is the most important thing I ever did in my career was be a co-op, right? And that I was a co-op with NASA, and that's led to just kind of this exciting, amazing career that I've been able to have. But the point in that is really in 2 ways. First, the company gets to know you. Second, it gives you the real world experience and you know what you like or don't like as well. It gives you money to so that you offset cost. All of those things are such a positive thing. So nothing beats experience. And I think we're getting better. I love the required co-ops that I believe it was Michael talking about earlier. Fantastic. Wish we could do that all the way around. I think that's just essential to it. And in ways that we can build in more real life experience in everything that we do in our universities is essential. And so I think that's the way of the future, ways that we can do that. We need a startup company that that creates some kind of virtual experience with real industry challenges that students can try and fail even, right? There was that ability to fail earlier without any repercussions, but I think that's kind of essential too. And we need something good there because I want every student to have access to that, not just, if you apply and get accepted by a company, but how do I make that part of our curriculum? And I think that would be important for the future.
I love that idea, Lisa, the startup that simulates a digital environment where students can kind of learn and take risks. Tom Cook, I know you're online and you heard that. These were really good insights. At Millennium Space Systems, we offer paid internships every summer where students do real work on real systems. So that's another opportunity for folks out there. In the last remaining minute, I wanted to go back to Roger. You mentioned Marie Bajah. The work your research group and graduate students is doing is applicable across the aerospace industry. And Marie Bajah is leading the way in space domain awareness. And given the increased space traffic, where we're sending up thousands of small satellites into low Earth orbit, there's more collision risk. What role do you think universities can play in making space more transparent, predictable, and holding folks accountable?
So I think one of them is the one I've touched on a couple of times. It's this astriograph effort that Marie Bajah is leading to basically, create this sort of network so that the situational awareness is transparent and available to all. I think there's also a significant software component to this in terms of taking all that data, analyzing it, and using it for predictive purposes to help people understand the risks that are out there.
Thank you, Roger. I think that takes us to time, and I hope everybody in the audience took away just how tremendous the space economy is right now. I know I did just in this short conversation, and how much new grads can benefit each of our companies and our company cultures and the bottom line. So thank you, everybody, for joining us.
Thanks so much for the opportunity.
Great moderator. Thank you.
Likewise, thank you.
Great moderator indeed. Thanks to all our special guests that were a part of it. And Jason Kim, we thank you as well. Thank you so much. And again, thanks for your kind comments telling me that he grew up watching me on television. Got to throw me under the bus. No, Jason was outstanding, and so were all his guests. So that's wonderful. It's America's Future Series. Our Space Innovation Summit on this Thursday continues all across the country, and we're delighted that you've chosen to be a part of it and join us. We're going to take a little break. You want to do so, David?
Yeah,
we're
let's
going to take a break for what, 3 or 4 minutes?
Yep, and come back.
Yeah.
Give people a chance. Go get a sandwich.
Yep, and
eat it at your desk.
Powder up and get something to drink, whatever works best for you. And we'll see you in 3 or 4 minutes. So thank you much, everybody.